The TalkSport Fan Network.
The ultimate on-demand destination for the UK's best fan-led football podcasts.
Want authentic supporter insight on all things Bournemouth? Follow Up the Cherries in all departments on the TalkSport Fan Network.
Club-dedicated content created by the fans, for the fans.
Search TalkSport Fan Network.
Welcome back to the show, Cherries fans. Now, before we get going, please hit the like, the subscribe and the bell button below. It helps the channel to grow. Now, I do have a very, very special guest with me today. Now, my special guest, a lot of you will know, mainly because he is a Cherries fan, but he is also a travel blogger. Now, he goes to the places that not many of you would go to, the likes of Afghanistan, Iraq, Iran, Syria, North Korea, you name it, he's been there. He's also written a lot of books, a number of books. He's going to be writing another book very, very soon. And he's also documents all of his travels on don'tstopliving.net. It is a pleasure to welcome onto Up the Cherries in all departments, Jonny Blair. Welcome to the show, Jonny. How you doing, mate?
Yeah, good. Yeah, nice to be on. Obviously, the season's finished, so it's a good time to sort of reflect on last season, get ready for the new season. And yeah, Cherries doing well at the minute. You know, can't complain. Stayed up easily, and
Yes.
and that was the aim. You know.
Yeah, it was a fantastic season in the end. Early doubts, I had them, to be honest. I did mention that Iriola didn't know whether or not his style was going to work, but he got there in the end, made some adjustments, and I tell you what, playing some of the best football we've ever seen. So what do I know?
Yeah, I mean, I think there were some turning points last year. I think it was at the Burnley at home.
Yes.
If we had to win that, it was like, I think that was our first win, wasn't it? And then we went to Sheffield United away and smashed them. And that was when I knew that, hey, we're too good for this. And then Man United away, going to Old Trafford and annihilating them. You know, there was even 2 goals disallowed. There was a VAR goal disallowed at the end that we could have beat them 4 or 5-0 away. And that's, if you'd have told a Bournemouth fan, you know, 15 years ago, we'll go to Old Trafford and smash them. Like, it's just beyond belief. You know, Man United were in European Cup finals back then. And we were in the 4th division. And so yeah, what a season, really.
Oh, mate, honestly, it was unbelievable, really, in the end. And, you know, how well we did. Of course, we got the points record as well.
Yeah.
We was hoping we could probably get a little bit higher up the table, but it wasn't to be. But can't complain. First season under Andoni Iriola, and it is something for us to build on, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. If we can keep some of the players, of course, but that's another thing. We don't know that yet. We won't know till the season starts what our squad is. But we'd love to keep Dom Solanke. We'd love to.
Well, I did turn around and I said 65 million was too little for him. I did think that it was quite good that we put that clause in the contract, but I think that's come back to bite us, really, hasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, in fact, it took him a while to get going, didn't it? His first few seasons, he wasn't firing on all cylinders. I think Josh King and Callum Wilson were still there at the time when he signed, weren't they?
Yeah.
So we still had 2 top-level strikers, and then Dom gets his chance, of course, and now look at him. He's flying, you know, 21, 22 goals or something. I can't remember now.
Yeah,
in all competitions.
Yeah, it was a very, very good return last season.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you where I think, you know, Dom Solanke's turning point was, and it might sound stupid, but sometimes things happen like this. When we got relegated, of course, Callum Wilson and Josh King left the club.
Yeah, we knew they were going. Yeah,
it gave Dom his chance, and because of that time in the Championship, he'd become a lot better player than if he was going to be playing second fiddle behind those 2.
Yeah, and of course we had 2 seasons back down there, so that sort of gave him a bit of time to get ready for coming back up. You know, I thought we were great in both those seasons. Probably Brentford shaded us the first season; they deserved the playoff win in the end, but. Yeah, I mean, well, we had all the manager changes, didn't we? Woodgate and all, Parker and all of the, you know, Parker took us up. So again, you kind of look back in the history and think, well, that's Scott Parker's contribution to this club. You know, he's taken us up to the Premier League. Okay, didn't work out. We lost 9-0 at Anfield, but hey, it's part of the system supporting the Cherries. It wouldn't be, you know, if it was plain sailing, we wouldn't enjoy this roller coaster as much, you know?
Exactly. And after 15 games, I think we was on 37 points after 15 games that Parker season. And I
Yeah,
thought we are going to walk this division. I
yeah,
thought, com- we are on fire. Nobody is getting close to us. And I think, sadly, Scott Parker, lost his job because of things he said, but secondly, I think his approach. But you saw that creeping in
mm,
throughout the season, and I think it shows what a good job Eddie had done. With
mm,
all those players, bringing those players in from the start, and making sure that was a solid team. Jason Tyndall, I think, kept it going, but when changes needed to be made,
yeah,
um, I think he was a little bit. He struggled a little bit. There's coaches and there's managers, isn't there, Johnny? And I think
yeah. Tyndall's
Jason,
more of a coach.
yeah,
Yeah.
completely agree with you.
Um,
But the good thing with Woodgate was it was a little bit of a reset before Scott Parker come in, because I know it might sound funny, but I think, Parker's a great manager in the championship.
mm,
But when things go wrong, I don't think he's particularly the best person to actually turn things round, is he?
yeah. I mean, he'll get another job. I don't know where he is now. I know he was in Belgium before, but he'll
Yeah,
get another job, but it'll probably be in the championship, or he could go to Scotland and do Rangers or Celtic. Probably he'd probably
yeah,
get away with that, but not for us. He's done it. He's played contribution to the club. That's it. Thank you, Scott. See you later.
completely agree. And I
Yeah,
think when he does get a championship job, he'll do very, very well with that side.
yeah,
Bristol City, for example, would be a perfect squad for him
mm,
to actually get them into a position where they're competing to get out of the championship. They've been in there so many years. They
yeah,
are what you would say a smaller club in the championship, but I
yeah.
think it would suit Scott Parker, and I think he could work with those players, especially if he's taken over from somebody who's done quite a decent job in the first place. It's
Right.
momentum really that I think he had right at the very start, and that has to be the credit has to be given to Woodgate for that, I think, as well.
Hmm. Yeah. Anyway, it's all done and dusted. We got Iraola,
Exactly.
and this is where we want to be, playing this excellent football with a
Yep.
manager who's got a great personality. He's funny. I find his interviews really quite cool,
Hmm.
and he's got a bit of a sneaky smile about him.
Yeah.
Like especially after the Man United the 2-2 draw. You could tell that he was fuming, and he was almost basically saying to Man United, "We've played you off the park twice this
Yeah.
season, and you got away with that. You
Hmm.
scraped a 2-2 at Dean Court, and let's be honest, they didn't deserve anything from us this season. We should have had 6 points there, but it is what it is."
Completely agree. And long may Andoni Iraola's sexy football
Yeah,
continue. But I tell
class.
you what, let's get on to our discussion today, because I tell you what, I'm delighted to have you join me. I've followed you for many, many years. When I first moved down to Bournemouth, I think that's when I started following you. Of course, we was on -17 back then.
Yeah.
Um, but very much like me, you weren't born in Bournemouth, and of course, you're originally from Bangor in Northern Ireland. What were the early days like?
Yeah, I mean, I grew up there. So, like, my dad is from Belfast. He played football. He actually played for Crusaders and Distillery, and he wanted to make it as a footballer. And actually, he was actually paid money to play football, but he was playing for Irish League, and he was always like the reserve, because in those days you didn't have like five subs, right? You would have like one sub or two subs. So if my dad could not get in the first team, they put him in the reserves. So he'd be playing every week for Crusaders reserve or something. So, he's been a football nut since he was a kid, kicking up. If you're born in Belfast, like my dad, you're looking at George Best and
Yeah.
Pat Jennings as your heroes. I mean, these are inspirational guys for us. Like, I mean, George Best is Ballon d'Or, and he comes from Northern Ireland. So that sort of says it all. That would be like someone from Estonia winning Ballon d'Or today. You can't imagine it happening, because it's all like the Messis, Ronaldos, the Modric, and Benzema. These are the Ballon d'Or winners.
Yeah.
These are superstars. So George Best was our first superstar. So growing up in Bangor, you're sort of aware of that if you really want, you can make it big, but you have to be that good. So obviously George Best, step above. And as we all know, in 1983, George Best coming to the end of his career, and he decides to join the best club in the world, AFC Bournemouth, right? Yep. So obviously George Best ended up there. Now, obviously that always stuck in my mind, the fact that George was there. Whether he was there for 5 games, 6 games, it doesn't matter. The fact is he was there. He could have played for 1 game, and that's a good enough thing for me. But growing up in Northern Ireland, we had a good football team in the 1980s. We were in the 82 World Cup. We were in the 86 World Cup. And in Euro 84, when they only had 8 teams in the Euros, we beat West Germany home and away in the qualifiers. And we only lost out because the Germans scored with 10 minutes to go against Albania. The Germans were drawing 1-1 with Albania. They scored a late goal and knocked us out. We were hoping that Albania could do us a favour there, but in 1983, the chances of Albania getting a draw away in Stuttgart or somewhere was not happening. Yeah. So we almost went to 3 major tournaments in the 80s. And in 86, probably you'll know, Northern Ireland win the World Cup. We weren't that great. We're in a group with Algeria, Spain, and Brazil, and I had the sticker book, and I had all the Belfast Telegraph used to have all these like pullouts of the newspaper where you just write in scores or whatever. And, you know, so the first time I ever heard of Bournemouth was actually in 1986 when Colin Clark, not only did he play for Northern Ireland, but he was actually at Bournemouth at the time. And I remember looking at that. So I grew up in Bangor, which is by the sea. We've got a beach, we've got a pier, and we begin with letter B. So somehow destiny was almost going to send me eventually to Bournemouth. But my father's a Tottenham fan. This is he took me to White Hart Lane. This is the thing, so now that we're on, you can hear a bit of this story. My dad took me to White Hart Lane, and I have 2 brothers. And actually, I've taken them all to Dean Court. So all of them have been to Dean Court now. Man. But they took me to White Hart Lane a few times, and there wasn't any love for me there. It was like, it's Spurs, it's a big club, and it's like, okay. So I watched Teddy Sheringham live, and I was amazed by him. I thought he was a cracking player. One of my heroes, actually, is, I just thought he had a lot of control about him. I just really liked him. I got to meet him. So I met Teddy Sheringham about 1994. Yeah. And that was also the first year that I visited Bournemouth. So my family, summer holidays in the 80s and 90s were all England, France, Scotland, Republic of Ireland for me. I wasn't really going far. But I ended up in Bournemouth a few days. Has a beach, has a football team. And in the back of my mind, it was always that sort of that link with Colin Clark, George Best. And then that trip in 94 where I met Teddy Sheringham, because we went to, what we did was we actually went to Bournemouth as a family, and then we went to London, and we had tickets for a Spurs game, and we got to meet Sheringham and Klinsmann. Jurgen Klinsmann was there as well. We got to meet them at the training ground, which was great. But it wasn't my thing to support a club that was, might sound weird, but Spurs were fashionable, because they had Klinsmann and Dumitrescu and stuff. And nowadays, Spurs, of course, are a laughingstock because even Harry Kane had to leave to try and win something, and he still hasn't won anything. So, so I guess growing up in Northern Ireland was different from England because we had the troubles going on. We had all this violence, the IRA and UVF and everything. But I was only into football, really. After school, I didn't care what politics was on. We were down the park playing football, watching football, getting into it. And obviously, my heroes were Northern Irish, which brought me the link to Bournemouth eventually, So that's a short, I was going to say that's a short answer to your question. It's probably not.
No, I'll tell you what, that's a brilliant answer. But you did move to Bournemouth for university, I believe. Yeah. And of course, that's when your love for our football club started. Like you say, we weren't a good side back then. You could have supported a Manchester United or a Spurs or someone like that. But what persuaded you to become a regular at Dean Court?
Yeah, so I mean, there's so many links. It was destiny anyway. I'm convinced it was destiny, and I like a story. I like something a bit different. When I went to school in Northern Ireland, right? You mentioned Man United, Spurs. Yeah, we had that. We had Leeds United fans. We had Everton fans. But also in my class, there was a guy that supported Millwall, and there was a guy that supported Wolves. And I always used to think that's the cool group, because like people would go into school on a Monday and go, "Oh, did you see the Man United match?" And the Wolves fan would be going, "Oh, I didn't see that one, but Wolves drew 1-1 away to Bury." And I'm like, that's more cool. And then you're getting into that. And you used to buy Match and Shoot magazine. Did you used to buy those?
Yes, yeah. I had loads.
Every week you're getting a different magazine, Match or Shoot. And at the back, they had all the results. Yeah. So you're looking through like the minutes of the goals or the attendance or who got sent off. And that sort of, I was always going through all of that. So obviously Bournemouth is not, we definitely in the 90s, I mean, almost liquidated. We had the Great Escape in 95. Yeah. We were not cool to support, and in those days you didn't really have football shirts to buy well, the Cherries you could, but it was the point where there was like a limit of buying that. I could only, in Northern Ireland, you could only buy Northern Ireland shirts, which obviously have the national team, but some clubs you couldn't even buy their shirt, but you couldn't buy it, And now, of course, we've got endless amount of shirts to buy and things to do. But yeah, of course, I had to go to university to further my career, and I chose Bournemouth. It was natural. So we had the George Best link, the Colin Clark link, 1994 holiday, when I saw Sheringham and Klinsmann and thought, well, I've seen Spurs, and that was cool, but on to the next one. And did I watch any other English teams? I did go to Anfield once to watch Liverpool, actually, in 96. Yep. And I wasn't actually, I have to say, I wasn't that impressed, even though it was like quite cool to go to Anfield when you're a teenager, because it's an iconic stadium, right? Yeah. But then Liverpool in the 90s were nothing that special. I mean, I think I saw Robbie Fowler, and it would have been before Michael Owen. It would have been like McManaman. Yeah, he was a cracking player. It would be like McManaman and Fowler and stuff. But again, no love for any of those teams. And then I had to choose my degree. I don't know what it's like in England. Do you have a UCAS form?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. So Craig, it's the same system. So when I went to Tech in actually Newton Ards, they asked you to pick 6 universities, right? 6, yeah. So I didn't have any time because I was busy working in the local butchery. I had no time to choose those 6. So I just chose the first 6 in the alphabet. Like A's and B's. So it was like Aberystwyth, Brighton, Bournemouth. It was all the A's and B's. And because you had to choose 6, I thought I'll keep one of them as Northern Ireland. So I put Belfast in. Yeah. And the other 5 were all in England. So I filled my UCAS form, sent it off, and the UCAS, I got a thing back from UCAS saying, "Oh, Bournemouth have contacted you. They want you to send an essay saying why you want to study there." I was like, okay, well, let's do that. So I just sent that off. And then they sent me a message back. I don't know how it worked in those days, whether it was in the post or it wouldn't have been on email. I can't remember how I even got that. I think they posted it to me.
I did it at a similar sort of time, and I think mine was post.
Yeah, so the Bournemouth University was, so not only were they on the list of 6, they were the first to ask me, the first to get back to me. Yeah. And they basically said, look, if you get 70% or above in that course that I was doing a course in Irish history, European history, and English literature, and I'd already studied journalism. So all Bournemouth needed was 70%. And I was thinking, like, gosh, that's actually really difficult to get. Like in my class, nobody was getting higher than like 65. So I realized this is actually quite difficult. So I was working in a local butchery, like full time, as well as doing the course in Newton Ards, and I just worked hard on the course, and I got 72% in the end. So by 2% I got into Bournemouth, and then they just sent me the document to say, yep, we've got a house for you in Charminster, and you're moving here in September. And I was like, that's brilliant. So I knew I was coming to Bournemouth, and I knew I wanted to go to my first proper match, because, it's funny, I say my first proper match. Yeah. I'd already been to watch Liverpool and Spurs. So that wasn't proper for me, was it? So I've been to watch Northern Ireland loads of times, but international football, different ball game, really. Because when you're seeing the same fans and the same players every week, it's a bit more intimate, you go to watch Northern Ireland, you'll see your mates, and then you'll see them 2 months later. There's no continuity. So arrived in Bournemouth. Actually, it was Springbourne where I first stayed, and you wouldn't believe it, but the uni, Bournemouth uni, they choose where you're going to live. Well, yeah, they basically do. So they put me in a house share in Springbourne, and so when I checked, I'm like, oh, I've got a local pub there. It's a Dolphin, and just up the road at the end of the Holdenhurst Road, is Dean Court. So I'm like, gosh, I'm like 20 minutes walk from the stadium. So as soon as I moved there, I was like, right, when's the next match? But then I didn't have any friends from Bournemouth. That is the thing. I moved there on my own. So I'm in a bar one night, and it's my first or second night in Bournemouth. I'm in a bar, and there's a big queue, and I'm getting really angry because where I come from, there aren't big queues for bars. I mean, drinking is massive in Northern Ireland, but somehow you go out on a night where it's not busy. And I wasn't used to this English life of like the bars are massively busy at the same time. It takes ages to get served. And I was just getting a bit angry that it took so long to get served. So I started complaining to the guy beside me. I said to him, "Are you from here?" And he goes, "Yeah, he's from Poole." So I'm like, is it always like this here? And he's like looking at me going, "Who's this guy? Why are you so angry in a bar? You should be happy that you're getting a drink." And I said, "Yeah." And I said, "Look, I'm a football fan. I've just moved here. I really want to go and watch the local team." And he says to me, he's a fan. He's been a fan for 20 years. His sister has a season ticket. And he said to me, so in the queue for the bar, before I've even got a drink, he says, "Let's go on Saturday. We're playing Hartlepool at home." So I'm like, brilliant. And I was a student at the time, so I was able to get a student price ticket as well, which was even more of a bargain. So I could go into the Dolphin. You remember the Dolphin, Craig?
I don't actually.
Yeah.
No, I don't. But I
Tesco
don't believe
now,
it's there anymore. Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is.
I'll have to do some research, but because I left Bournemouth behind, you see, after. So this is only the start of the story, obviously.
Yeah.
So when I first moved there, I went to Hartlepool game, and Warren Feeney was playing. So basically, Warren Feeney's another Northern Irishman, right? So I took my Northern Ireland flag to the match, but my mate from Poole was like, "Oh, I'm not sure you can do that. I think that might not go down too well." I'm like, "Come on." So we're losing 1-0 at home to Hartlepool, right? And it's the second half. Derek Holmes and Warren Feeney are brought on as subs. Sean O'Driscoll was the manager. So I'm like there with my Northern Ireland flag going to my mate. Now, my mate's Austin. I'm like saying to Austin, "Look, we're going, don't worry, Warren Feeney will get an equaliser. We'll draw this game." And he's like, "You really think so?" Like, so Feeney comes on, he sets one goal up and he scores the other one, and we're 2-1 up. And I'm going nuts with my flag, jumping up and down. And all these Bournemouth fans are going, "Yeah, he's Warren Feeney's mate. He's from Northern Ireland." And well, he's not my mate, but I know who he is. And then, so Derek Holmes, I think Holmes's was a header. Feeney was like a shot in the bottom corner. It was at the far end, because we were in the north stand that day, Fletcher stand. And then in the 90th minute, Hartlepool equalised, and it was 2-2. I was gutted. But that was my first match. So, like, for me to have such emotion on my first match, like losing 1-0, 2 substitutions, Sean O'Driscoll works a bit of magic, brings on the 2 subs, Northern Irishman scores, people jump on me. And in the bar in the Dolphin after the game, I was celebrating. But a lot of Bournemouth fans were like, we drew. I'm like, "Yeah, but it was a great match, wasn't it?" So I really got into it. And then my friendship grew after that, because we would invite more people to the football. And in those days, it was brilliant going to Dean Court, because I think we had a freedom at that time. O'Driscoll was one of those guys that there used to be a song that you rarely see him smile. Yeah. And it was quite, I found that quite funny, because he's an Irish guy, but he's from the Republic of Ireland, O'Driscoll. So I had loads of links there. So that was me. As soon as I had come out of the Hartlepool match that day, I was like, "That's it. I'm a Cherry, and this is where I belong." Mostly the North Stand, but since then I've been in the other stands as well, depending on where I got a ticket,
But that's the great thing about this football club, is that we are unfashionable. We are unfashionable. We do punch above our weight.
Yeah,
in a lot of people's eyes, but that's what football's all about, isn't it, Johnny?
Yeah, I mean, that's why I quite like Luton as well. I mean, and we shouldn't, you should never have 2 teams, but I didn't want Luton to get relegated just because they know what our journey was like, to go right down and then come back up. And, so I hope that Luton come back up, and that's just a football fan in me. And I'd like to see Rotherham in the Premier League because they were one of the teams that lost the points with us. And, like the FA and the Premier League, it's all money. And football is played on the pitch, not in the bank, not in the stands. Actually, it's played on the pitch. If you can beat the other team, you deserve to be anywhere. Look at Greece won the Euros, right? I mean, that's a freak, but you can't argue with that, right? On the pitch, they won the matches, and they won the tournament. Fair play. That's it, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. And do you know what? I was actually out in Falaraki when that actually happened.
Greece that must have been a hell of a party out there.
To be honest, I can't remember too much of it after about 11 o'clock. But too much of it. But I tell you what, it was such a party because it was that underdog. Now, if Man City win a Premier League title nowadays, maybe not back in 1998 when they got relegated to Division 2, but the thing is nowadays it's like we've won another title, whereas that underdog doing something spectacular. Imagine if we won the FA Cup or even the Carabao Cup.
Like, we've never been in a major semi because I think the quarterfinals of the League Cup, Eddie Howe took us to a few, and I think in the 50s we beat Spurs or something into the FA Cup quarterfinal, and then the Scummers beat us last time, I think, when we were in it. Quarterfinal, I think they beat us at Dean Court, didn't they? When we'd gone down the season before. So I'd take a semi-final, but when you're in a semi-final, you want to win it and get into the final. Like Coventry, probably you watched Coventry last season.
Oh yeah, I did. Yeah,
that was gutting because I think I'm like an underdog fan. You know what I mean? I'd far rather see Coventry in the FA Cup final than Man United, and that's unfashionable. But that's what football is,
It's like the Leicester story when Leicester won the Premier League. We had Tom Meehan on from Kasabian recently. It's that story of going from a side that have just survived relegation to win the Premier League. That's what football is all about. That is what makes football.
Yeah, and it was basically the same squad. I mean, Jamie Vardy was there. I think Mahrez was there. The whole squad almost the same. The camaraderie probably that they built to stay up just drove them on. And what always shocks me is if you look back at the league table of that season with Leicester, they won it by 10 points. 10 points. Nobody can say, oh, they were lucky. Well, you don't win a league by 10 points by luck, right?
Exactly.
You might win it on goal difference by luck or by 1 point, but not. And also they didn't beat us that season. They drew at Dean Court, and I think we got a 0-0 away there. I've got a feeling Boric saved a penalty, did he?
Yeah, you're right. I'm sure you're right because I know that we were one of the only teams that they didn't beat at all during that title.
I don't know if it's Boric. Who was our keeper that season? It might have been Begovic. I can't remember, but he saved I think he saved a penalty at Leicester away.
Boric, sure.
Yeah, it was Boric. Yeah.
Yeah.
And just when you mentioned there about Kasabian, who was it you said you had on?
Tom Meehan.
Tom Meehan. This is a weird freak. Is like. So when I lived in Bournemouth in those days, I went into it was Mr. Smith's. There was a rock club, and there was guitar bands up in the triangle up the hill. And a mate of mine was in a band, and he was so his name is Ben Pauly. Is he from Bournemouth? Yeah, he's from Bournemouth. So he was in a band, and he invited me along to the gig. And I said to them, "Do you have a band manager?" And he's like, no, but we don't really need that or want that. I said, well, I could be the band manager. And it just meant that I would go and give out flyers and even CDs. We had CDs of the records and we would just hand them out, trying to get a record deal. Of course, we never made it. But our drummer was the session drummer for Kasabian, Ryan Glover. So he played, I think he played on some of Kasabian's first album. And the band, to name check them, was The Waves. But we never became successful because it was actually... We were there at the wrong time, just before social media became massive. So there was no way to promote that,
I think it's how you hit it, isn't it, really? And when you actually make that mark, of course, all these bands like Kasabian, it's kind of the right place at the right time, isn't it?
Is he a Leeds fan? If he's Kasabian, it's
no. That's Kaiser Chiefs.
Oh,
You're thinking of Kaiser Chiefs.
Yeah.
Kasabian are all Leicester fans.
Oh, are they? Oh, so that's why you
Yeah.
mentioned it. Yeah. No, because we know that Man City and Noel Gallagher and all, because they're. Do you know what's funny? I've never seen Noel Gallagher at Dean Court. He probably can't get a ticket. He only goes to the games he can get a ticket. Yeah. Yeah, that's funny, that, isn't it?
It's either that or he's still in the bar.
Unless he was at Dean Court in like 1989 when we were both in the second division before Oasis came out.
Yeah.
But no. Yeah, and on the subject of music, Craig, I've got a few things to show to you and the public on this show. So I'm just going to show you this one. Now, I've had this for about 20 years. Can you see that?
Full screen.
Can you see that? Let me take the CD out.
Yes.
It's where am I? Oh, there we go. It's the Ballad of Wade Elliott, right?
Oh, awesome!
Up the Cherries in all departments, and so the first track is the Ballad of Wade Elliott. The second track is Get Your Faith Now, and the third track is Ocean Free, and that was released by the Bewley Brothers around the time where. Yeah, I mean, Wade Elliott was a cracking player. I don't know if you watched Wade. You remember Wade?
Yes, I remember Wade.
I mean, I love a winger that can take players on and sort of cut inside, get the ball into the box, and comes up with a few goals as well. So that was the Wade Elliott one. You know, I'm a bit of a geek for collecting random things. So I remember buying that at Dean Court in the old club shop. Well, it was in the same place as the current Superstore is, but it was just it was a smaller shop then. And I brought that, and then I've also brought this one, which is a DVD. Do you see who that is on the front?
That's Fletch.
That is Super Fletch. And it's a great depiction of him because he got, he's a big muscular guy. I met Fletch, and he's massive, and he's a great character to have around. And I like that depiction of him. I sort of haven't seen it since. That was a thing called Cherry TV. Let's have a look at that. Oh, the DVD just came out there. That comes with a bonus disc. So I haven't watched that in years. There's the Brentford game where Fletch got a hat trick. There's actually a bonus disc with it. Gosh, there you go. I didn't even expect that to come out. So there you go. The Super Fletch DVD from the Brentford game on the 1st of January 2005 or 2006, is that 2005? Okay, that's going back a fair bit. 19 years, gosh. Anyway,
out of interest, actually, Matt's just mentioned to me as well, who also does the channel. I reckon did they do different covers featuring different players at the time as well?
I've got a James Hayter one. Hold on. Should have prepared that, shouldn't I? Here's a James Hayter one.
Oh, look at that.
That is that was our FA Cup run, and that's James Hayter at Burnley away. We played him off the park. We lost 2-0. I think we had the more possession and chances. Couldn't get the ball in the net. That's James Hayter ruining a miss. So they did a few of those, but of course DVDs are not popular anymore, are they? I mean, it's a lot of this stuff's on
streaming now.
Streaming, yeah. So I used to love those DVDs back in those days. I mean, there was the Hayter hat trick, which I've actually got on VHS.
Yeah.
Oh, so I think Matt's mentioned that he's got the Fletcher DVD with a different cover.
Yes.
That is interesting, isn't it? I wonder how many people out there have that. Is that a collector's piece, do you think?
It's got to be. It's got to be.
Yeah. I love that sort of thing. And Fletcher's even written his own Fletcher's actually written the bit on the back. It's an actual quote from Steve Fletcher. That's even better. I'll have to get him to sign that. I'll have to bring that to Dean Court and see if he's around, get him to sign it.
Honestly, mate, definitely.
Yeah.
By all means, we can reach out to him and we can get that sorted for you. So you don't have to worry. But we were talking the other day actually about James Hayter and his hat tricks. What are the favourite memories have you got from watching the Cherries in that sort of period?
I have a lot of stories about Hayter. I'll start with an easy one because we played Wrexham and he scored a hat trick in 2 minutes 20 seconds. Now,
yes,
a lot of people remember that, but there's loads of stories with it. one of the stories is he's from the Isle of Wight, right?
Yeah.
And probably you know this, his dad, or I don't know if it's his dad and his mum, but they used to come and watch James Hayter, right?
Yeah.
Now, for some reason, on that Tuesday night, Sean O'Driscoll didn't bring James on as sub, until really late. So his parents had to get the last boat back to the Isle of Wight. So they left the match early. Now, this is this is the story that I heard. I think it was in the Daily Echo the day after, a few days later, they'd mentioned it. But I mean, that's a classic story. I mean, imagine that. You come all the way from Isle of Wight. And I felt guilty hearing that, because the reason he wasn't on the pitch was because Warren Feeney was the striker that day.
Yeah.
Now, so this is what happened. Feeney scored 1 and we were 3-0 up, right? And then Hayter comes on and gets a hat-trick in 2 minutes 20. One of my mates that was with me in the North Stand that night, I don't know where he got the strength from, but he lifted one of the guys up really high and was jumping him up and down like that. And that was when we were 6-0 up. And everyone was going, did Hayter really just score 3 in a row there? And we didn't really know in those days. Nobody had a smartphone. So when we got into the pub, we were checking it. And then it came on TV that Hayter got the 2 minute 20. And in the stadium, we didn't realize it was that quick. It was like, I was thinking, God, did he score a hat-trick in about 10 minutes? That was pretty good. And then it turns out to be 2 minutes 20. But there's a backstory here. Forgive me for going on a bit, but the backstory is that match was actually postponed originally. Because I had a ticket for a Saturday game, and it was a waterlogged pitch. And in those days, like I said, we didn't have a smartphone, no information. We went all the way to Dean Court on the Saturday. Like, we're there at 2:45. And the groundsman's like, the match is postponed, waterlogged pitch. It's not that heavy, the rain. But obviously the pitch wasn't good enough. And that would happen quite a lot in those days. You'd get a match called off. I remember a Chesterfield match. It was just absolutely torrential rain. And it was at home. And we drew 0-0. Probably the worst game I've ever been to. 0-0 at home to Chesterfield. Rained the whole day. Got absolutely soaked. None of the players did anything of note on the pitch, and it was around that same time. So that was the Hayter story. To move it forward with James Hayter, keeping him in the story, I organised a pub crawl for a few of my Cherries mates, and the pub crawl was to spell the word Bournemouth with a letter of either a drink or a pub. Right, so let's say M is Moon in the Square, okay?
Yes.
So you just go into Moon in the Square and you order a beer. So you've ticked off B and you've ticked off M, right? You've got both. So all you have to do is complete the word Bournemouth with a drink. So like you go into O'Neill's, that's an O, and it became quite easy in the end. But anyway, we were in a bar, and oh my gosh, for the life of me, I don't remember which bar. Okay, anyway, it was a bar on the hill towards the triangle.
Oh,
and it was on the left. Oh, what's the name of that bar? So imagine, where, oh gosh, I'm trying to think. So let's say I've come out of Moon in the Square and I'm taking, I'm walking up the hill towards a triangle. There's a bar on the left. Do you know
it Halo? Is it
no,
Halo?
It wasn't that. No,
I'm trying to think now.
Can't remember it. But how do I not know the name of that bar? Wait a moment. Do you mind if I check? Because I think a friend reminded me about what the bar was. Gosh, what was it called? Brewhouse and Kitchen.
Yes.
Right. Okay. So we're in the Brewhouse and Kitchen.
Yeah.
Just as normal, there's about 7 or 8 of us on the pub crawl. So I've got the piece of paper just ticking off. Everyone's got their B or their O for their drink, and one of the girls on the pub crawl, Helen, she comes running up to me and goes, Johnny, James Hayter's at the bar. So I just started laughing, going, right. So I've organised a Cherries pub crawl and James Hayter's at the bar. And so I went to the bar and James Hayter's standing there. And I'm like, all right, James. So I get the piece of paper out for the Bournemouth pub crawl. And he looks at it and goes, what's all this then? And I went, well, we're doing a Bournemouth pub crawl. We've got to have like a letter for each character. But I haven't filled in letter H yet. Can I just write Hayter and then get you to sign it for me? And he goes, yeah, no problem. So he signs by the H, James Hayter. And then everyone on the pub crawl got the H as James Hayter's signature. So we didn't even have to have a drink for that, because it was just, oh, we've met James Hayter. That's better than anything else. And we were talking away to him for a bit, and he's with some of his mates. So I said to James, oh, do you remember that goal you scored against Notts County from 20 yards into the bottom corner as a screamer? And James is like, no, I don't remember that one. And I started reeling off all these goals I remembered. And he was always like, oh, I don't remember that one. And then James Hayter's mate said to me that I know more about James Hayter than James Hayter, which I found, it's quite funny to be in that situation. But he was a good lad. It was good crack. He was there having a drink with his mates Friday night. And the next day we were playing Leicester at home. So that what Leicester game was that? It was the one where Maguire had a shocker, and we were 4-0 up. And then they scored 2 at the end. It was 4-2. So I think September 2018 or September 2019. Don't remember exactly, but we smashed Leicester. Eddie Howe was the manager. And I met James Hayter the day before. So cracking story that. And, I've got a photo of it, so it's not fake news. I got the piece of paper and a photo with James.
I tell you what, that is brilliant story. So James Hayter was the final letter on the pub crawl.
On his own pub crawl. And we'd been talking about him. We'd actually been talking about him just before that. That's why I thought it was a freak that he couldn't possibly be in the bar. But there you go. That's the only time I've met him as well. So even at all the matches I went to, I never sort of hang around after the ground to meet some of the players. I did a few times with Warren Feeney. Used to catch up and have a quick chat with Warren Feeney. But I didn't really meet many of the players back in those days.
Well, if anybody follows you, and like I say, I followed you for years and years and years, since I've moved down to Bournemouth, which was back in 2008, everybody will know that you travel the globe. And how many countries are we up to, Johnny?
Yeah, this is a good debate. I'm a bit of a nationalist and a separatist. So for me, Northern Ireland, Wales, Scotland, England, Isle of Man, Jersey, Guernsey, they're all separate for me, right?
Yeah,
because I like to look at, the people that are different, the culture that's different. I mean, Isle of Man, it's not England. So if it's not England and it's not Northern Ireland and it's not Scotland, what is it? It's Isle of Man. So I like to separate things up. So I've been to about 200 countries, probably a little bit more that I recognize. For some people, they might say it's only 160, but it's still a decent number, right? So some people might call it UK. If they want to call it UK, call it UK. That's just one country. But for me, I'll count it as the 4 main ones, and then even the smaller entities, Isle of Man, Jersey, Guernsey, etc. So yeah, more or less 200 around the world.
I've got to agree with you. To be honest, cultures are different wherever you go. That they are different countries. Scotland is different to England.
Well, they're both playing in the tournament, aren't they? They both have a different team. If it wasn't, it would be UK against Germany tonight.
Yes,
in the tournament.
Yeah, most definitely. How many of those do you reckon you've worn your Cherry shirt in?
I was thinking about this. There was a period where I had lost a shirt, and there was a period where I didn't travel with my Cherry shirt in South America because for some reason I hadn't packed it. So I was thinking about this because it was a good question. I wish it was all of them, but it wasn't, because there were some countries I went to, like I said, without it. And there were other countries I went to watch Northern Ireland, the national team. So when I go to watch Northern Ireland, I sometimes don't pack the Cherry shirt. So probably about 120 to 130 I've had this shirt in. I could even probably check that from my photos, but I now I won't go anywhere without it. Like if I go to a new country next week, I'm definitely taking it. But if I didn't take the shirt, I sometimes had the scarf at least, Yeah. So I would have had the scarf probably more. No, it'd be, it's about, let's say 130 countries with either the scarf or the shirt. And any shirt, could be an old shirt, could be a training top, as long as the badge is on it, Yeah,
definitely. Well, it's fair to say as well that you've been to some places that some people wouldn't consider a holiday destination.
Yeah.
The likes of Afghanistan, Iraq, Iran, Syria. There's probably even more as well. I'm guessing, Jonny, when you go to these sort of places, you have to really plan ahead, know who you're meeting to ensure your safety. Or how do you approach it when you go to somewhere like that?
Yeah, I think the world is a massive place, but if you're going to one place for a holiday or for a trip or
Yeah,
backpacking through it, research focus on that place only. You don't care
yeah,
about the others. So if I'm going to Afghanistan, I'm probably going to spend a week at least just researching it. So I look at sightseeing. You
yeah,
know, I want, what sites do I want to see? How can I do them easily? How can I do them to ensure that I'm safe? Who can I meet? Who can I trust? What should I wear? What should I eat? There would be a checklist. Now, I'm very much into the pen and the paper, so I
yeah,
will write things on a piece of paper. I'm not getting my phone out and doing it because I like to have a checklist on paper. So I'll do a checklist of what I want to see in the country,
yeah,
and then I'll step by step after that I plan it. So I normally look at, do I need a visa? So obviously Afghanistan, I needed a visa. How can I get the visa? How much does it cost? Can I get a visa for 1 month? How long can I stay? And then you're starting to looking at how much money will it cost. So it goes through all that scenario. And then another good one is you're looking at what friends do I have that have already been there? And they are excellent people to contact. It doesn't matter if a friend of mine was only for 1 day in a different part of Afghanistan or whatever. If they have some knowledge, ask them. So
yeah,
I normally, yeah, I think asking friends is a great one because guaranteed that we will know someone, even just know them online, that has been there. You know, so if any Cherries fans are interested in places I've been, just write to me and I'll tell you what it was like, or I'll have a blog post on it, or I can say, yeah, I went here and I did this. Just because I did that doesn't mean they have to do it. So maybe I went to Afghanistan and I saw a Buddhist monastery, or I saw the old city of Alexander the Great. Maybe
yeah,
those people don't want to see that. They want to go and see a barbecue in the desert. You know, people have different approaches to travel. I'm selfish with mine. I like to always try to get a football match in. I always like to get a football stadium, a football match. I like to do let's say the textbook sightseeing. So if there's
yeah,
an important church or an important mosque, I need to see it.
yeah,
I also love bars, cafes, restaurants, and I'm looking for a niche one or a cool one that
mhm,
will sort of fit me and has not been overwritten about. You'll never see me backpacking through those countries going to McDonald's or Starbucks. Will never
yeah,
happen. You know, I'd rather not eat, to be honest, than or I'd even skip a coffee not to have that company's coffee. So actually, yeah, I've got my own checklist that I go through and I plan it. And I don't know if you know, but in Afghanistan, not only did I watch a match, but I played in a match.
yes,
And I don't really play football anymore. But I decided I have to play. This is what happened. We were actually at a Buddhist monastery, and I had a tour guide. So when I organized Afghanistan, because I do blogging, I've got contacts in the industry that can
yeah,
sort of hook me up with a tour, get a good promotion, get some deal. And that's good for my safety. And it's also good for local knowledge. So anyway, I wrote to this guy before the trip and I said, look, I'm a football fan. Any chance of a bit of football in the tour? And not only did we get a bit of football, he meets me at the border with under 19 international from Afghanistan international team, right?
yeah,
Mohammed Reza became my friend there. So he's played under 19 for Afghanistan national team. I'm like, you know, that he's on the same level as like Josh McCoy or something. And
yeah,
I'm thinking, this is nuts. You know, this is as good as it gets. And then we're in this monastery in the middle of Afghanistan. It's a place called Samangan or what's the other Tashkurgan. So we went to Tashkurgan and then Samangan Monastery, and we're up at the top of the hill. Beautiful views over the countryside. I got the cherry scarf and all out with a photo. I noticed there are kids down below playing football. So I said to Mohammed, should we just go down and play with them? And the guy's like, well, we'll have to check because in this area, you have to be careful who's in charge of the region and things like that.
yeah,
And I said, well, what we'll do is I'll be captain of one team and you be captain of the other team because we're older than them. They all looked like kids, right? In
yeah,
age, I don't know what age they were, 12 to 16, maybe even younger. And I think there were 18 of us. So it was a 9-a-side match We got it organized, and we played a match in the countryside. Afghanistan's national sport is buzkashi, which is horse riding, chasing after a goat's head, right? Yeah. So football is not important in Afghanistan. So I went to watch their national sport, buzkashi, and then their second biggest sport is cricket, which I find quite hard to believe. But as an Englishman, you'll probably know, because cricket is Afghanistan are in the World Cup, aren't they?
Yes, they are.
I don't know. Are you a cricket fan, Craig?
I've watched a bit of it.
Right.
I'm not an expert. Believe it or not, I've got an India cricket top because I went there last year. But
they're massive in it, you know.
Yes,
yeah. So basically, the Afghans is great crack, because obviously they have three sports. Then they've got buzkashi, cricket, and football. But they thought that I was good, and that blows my mind, because I'm like if I played with English or Northern Irish guys, I'm normally the worst player on the pitch, apart from when it comes to taking penalties, because I don't miss them. Yeah. But so we played the match, and I could see that they're almost like a Wimbledon old long ball style. Like the ball's going up in the air all the time, and I'm having to jump up and head it. And I'm thinking, football, this is not Eddie Howe's style, and bear in mind, I was in Afghanistan in 2016. So it was actually our first Premier League season in history, top flight. Yeah. And we were playing Arsenal, I think, a few days later. I can't remember if it was home or away, but so I had to get that on TV somehow. So basically what happened was played the match, and there were no goals because of the boring style. But from 30 yards, I hit a lob over the goalkeeper and it went in. But they didn't allow it. They said it was too high, because the height should be the children's height, not the adult height. So I was given a VAR decision of no goal in Afghanistan. I mean, and the weirdest thing is, my tour guide has a video of that goal, and he showed it to me, and I went, "That's definitely in," but you haven't quite got the whole goal. It was like Jeff Hurst style, but Jeff Hurst's one was, the debate was did it cross the line? My debate was it over the bar or under the bar? And they ruled it to be over the bar, Craig. So I'm classing it. I'm classing it as I scored a 1-0 away winner in Afghanistan, and I actually not wearing a Cherries shirt, wearing the scarf, because the Afghan style is put the scarf around your neck while you're playing football. So, but I've got some great photos of that, of me with the kids after we posed for photos, and we drove away from that village, and they were all waving to me right until the last moment. They hadn't seen a foreign guy before, never mind played football with one. That was a great memory, and that was, that's Afghanistan.
Iraq, of course, you was in the northern part of Iraq, I believe. Kurdistan, which, if anybody knows, the Kurdistan area of Iraq, it is an area that are looking for autonomy. Effectively, they want to break away from the main central government. But what was that like? Was that quite safe? Because I've seen that northern Iraq, Kurdistan, we should call it, is quite a safe place.
Yeah. So I was backpacking in the Middle East with my ex-girlfriend. She was a very, very brave girl. She would never say no to things, right? Yeah. So I said to her, look, Iraq is visa free if you fly into the north. And she's like, are you sure? I said, yeah, we don't need a visa. She's like, let's go there next week. Because we were already in Iran. We'd spent a month in Iran. So I said, look, we get a 14-day visa at the airport, and then we'll just get a taxi to take us to a hotel, and everything will be fine. And I'll do some writing on it and some blogging, and we'll just tour the northern part. And I found out about this UNESCO World Heritage Site, this really old village called Ahmadiyya. It's a great name. So we did a hike and a walk up there, and I found it quite safe. The only thing is there were a lot of checkpoints, and we actually moved. We ended up in the southern part of Iraq because we had to get through the checkpoint. But we had to get one of the drivers to tell them, don't tell them that you don't have a visa for mainland Iraq, because there's a different visa for the north part. It's quite complicated, that bit, which is why I didn't go to Baghdad. So I would go back to Iraq, but if I'm going back, I would go to Basra and Baghdad this time to see the southern part. And the other thing that was funny is, in fact, this is a crazy story. I don't think I've told this one before, is you remember we had a goalkeeper, Shwan Jalal.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah. So he was born in Baghdad, but he actually played. This is. I think that we'll have to check this, right? But he played, I think, under 18 for England, and he played one match for Kurdistan, unrecognized national team.
Yeah.
So that was also in my mind. So I had to see a football stadium when I was in Iraq. So I went into the Kurdistan National Stadium, but when I got there, the door was open, right? And I was like, can I get away with just walking in there? So I just walked straight in, right? And I'm thinking, this is nuts. No, there's no one here, right? So I've walked into the National Kurdistan Stadium in Erbil, very north part of Iraq, Iraqi Kurdistan, and I'm taking photos of the pitch. I'm going, wow, what a great stadium. I guess it's about the same size as Dean Court, but I think it didn't have roofs. It was like open. I think it was open plan. And suddenly I look around and the door slams and I'm locked in. And I'm like, what's going on here? I'm like, and I'm looking around. Is there CCTV? Is there anyone here? Have I done something really wrong here? And it's probably one of the only moments on my travels where I thought, I'm on my own here. I'm scared. I'm going to have to climb out of a football stadium that I shouldn't be in. So I walked over and I'm like going, shit, there's, they've locked me completely in here. And there were changing rooms. And I was thinking, why was it open in the first place? So there's a groundsman in, right?
Yeah.
But it turned out that there was also a goalkeeper in. And so what I did was I thought, you know what, I'll just pull the Shwan Jalal card here. And, if they say anything, why are you here? Why? And so apparently the door had slammed because the groundsman closed it thinking no one was in there, right? But then when I started banging and knocking, trying to get out frantically, that goalkeeper came up. I should have asked him for his goalie gloves, but it would have been a bit cheeky. He's got his goalie gloves. And I'm like, do you know Shwan Jalal? And he goes, yeah, I played with him. And I'm like, you're kidding me. So I've got a photo of me with the goalkeeper. I don't know his name. I've got a photo with him. Don't know his name, but he played with Shwan Jalal years and years ago. I was in Iraq 2013. So I guess Jalal would have been at the Cherries, maybe he would have been. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it was around that sort of time he left, didn't he?
Yeah.
I'm just trying to think. It might have been a little bit before that.
Right, it could have been, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that might have been sort of Artur Boric. I can't remember who we had between Jalal and Boric. He's a goalkeeper, actually. No, my memory goes sometimes. I forgot who we had. But anyway, that was wild. So there were all these little random stories that happened. And that one I haven't told before. I'll have to put that in a book because I'm writing another book. I'll have to put that Jalal story in a book.
Yeah. He actually left the first championship season as well. Matt's just corrected me there. So
I missed. Yeah. So when I was there, he had just left us. Yeah.
Yeah. And Ryan Allsop actually.
Allsop. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
And Flahaven was around that time, or am I?
I think Flahaven was that a little bit before
later.
That.
I can't remember now. It's Allsop. Yeah. And we had some bad goalkeepers. Lee Camp. Oh, don't remind me.
Yeah.
The memories come back. You're thinking, who did we have in nets around that time? But Lee Camp was capped by Northern Ireland. He was English with a Northern Irish, father or mother or something.
Yeah.
We capped him and we lost 4-1 to Estonia. So I don't have good memories of Lee Camp, actually. Anyway. Next question, Craig, I guess, because that was a long
No, I'll tell you what, absolutely loved that. I did want to touch on one country that you went to.
Yeah.
And in fact, because I've read your blog, don'tstopliving.net, please, everybody go check it out because I tell you what, it's brilliant that you've got this all documented. But one place was Cambodia, and I've done quite a bit and I've read up. I'm always quite interested in history, but Cambodia was it was a difficult trip, wasn't it, because of what you saw there, and of course off the back of Pol Pot and the Khmer Rouge.
Yeah.
How did you find that? Because it must be stomach churning.
Yeah, I think that when you travel, a lot of these Instagrammers and bloggers, they glam it up as a beautiful life sitting on the beach sipping cocktails. Well, if you want to do that, go to Mallorca and stay there for a week, and that's what you want to do. But I want to see the whole world, and I want to see the good and the bad. So Pol Pot, obviously, Khmer Rouge, Cambodia had a genocide, and to see the aftermath of that and the people trying to recover. But as well as this genocide, so you can do all this kind of. I did the death camp. I did It's a place called Killing Field. Have you been there, Craig?
I haven't, no, but I've read and seen the pictures.
Yeah, in fact, wait a moment. Do you know what? What I did was, because it's funny that you mentioned that. I didn't know you were going to mention Cambodia, but there's my book from it, The Killing Fields.
Yeah.
And I keep that one quite close to my desk because I often go back to reference on that. Because it's very poignant. It's one of those memories you can't forget. So, like, basically, you're in a death camp. You're in a prison. Which is in Phnom Penh, that was in the capital. And it's because 6 million people were killed. And we kind of become a bit oblivious to that because we're in Europe and, we are used to like Hitler's regime or Stalin's regime that were brutal for European people. The amount of Jewish, Polish, Hungarians that were killed, the amount of British and French that lost their lives as well going to fight. And the allies, even like Australia, all the countries that lost lives in the war. Yeah, we're selfish because that's what we focus on. Yeah, we have our wear a poppy, the British, the British army basically.
Yes.
But if we can go and travel a bit, we can see that we had problems in the UK and Germany had their major disasters with their taking over different countries, but many countries had it, and Cambodia can touch your heart. You can meet nice people there, and you can also party there. So you can sort of do the gory stuff the first few days, and then spend a week there's a city called Siem Reap, which has a street called Beer Street. And I was like, "Are you kidding? It's called Beer Street." So on Beer Street, it's just full of bars and restaurants, and the Cambodians love it because they need the money from tourists. And also, they know that they now live in a country where people are not killing each other. People are trying to help each other. And, the regime has been and gone. And the future should be more about that. And, I mean, even this football tournament this month, which is in Germany, that will hopefully be good for society because it will show people that, Poland, Czechia, Scotland and England were all fighting against Germany. And now we're in a football tournament with them in their country. And there might be a wee bit of argy-bargy. But if Poland play Germany, that should be on the pitch. That's where the big one is. And I mean, I know Scotland do actually play Germany. So, that's going to be, that's a massive, Ryan Christie. So that's going to be massive.
Yeah.
That sort of match. To kind of see, a Cherries player as well, pitting their wits against mighty Germans in Germany. I think, that sort of, so football will rise above, Craig, but I'm glad you asked me about the kind of the disasters and the war of the past in Cambodia. So I recommend visiting, but try and keep your prejudices away. Just see what you see, and know that the people went through a lot of bloodshed and hurt in those countries,
And it was in a space, I believe Pol Pot only reigned, didn't he, for about 3 years? I might have that wrong, but
it wasn't a long period. I don't know. I can't, I can't remember exact. But 4 or 5. I don't know. I would have to check it. I did study history, but I forget loads of things. I probably still remember, Warren Cummings' goal against Wickham, but I forgot when Pol Pot was in charge.
It's dates, isn't it? But all we do know is that these places in history are very, very important because people need to learn from them. People need to remember them to actually make sure that the same mistakes aren't happening again, which, of course, there is unfortunately lots of wars going on at the moment. And unfortunately, things do look like they are starting up again. But one of the biggest places as well, and everybody will know this, you've already mentioned Germany and, of course, Hitler's Nazi regime, Auschwitz and Birkenau, which, of course, is in Poland. It's somewhere that I can't say I'd like to go, because you can't say you'd like to go somewhere like that, but I need to go because of that historical purpose, if that makes sense, Johnny. But
Yeah.
what was your experience like there?
Yeah, I mean, it's chilling. But I think I don't know whether I think it's easier for me because I grew up in Northern Ireland, so nothing really scares me or nothing worries me. You know, like I think when we went to school, you'd have sometimes your day off school because there's a bomb scare, or like the shopping centre is not open because there's a bomb scare. It became quite normal, unfortunately. And then when I started traveling, I was like, oh my gosh, there's no bad things happening here. Like I might actually survive today. And then when you go to somewhere like that, then you realize that actually a lot of these countries had that before and now they don't. So the death camps are very chilling, very hard to take in, but you have to see it. And you know, it's only a day trip. You know, we're going as a tourist to see it for a few hours, and then we're going back home for good food and a beer down the pub. But actually, those guys went there and they were killed, or they were working for the Germans until they got too weak to work, and then they died. So all of that, it's sad, but you know, it's the history we grew up in. I don't know if do we have any German players at the Cherries? I know we had Poland, we had Boruc. Can't think of any Germans. Could be wrong.
Yeah, I can't. Question. I don't believe there's no German players in the squad at the moment. But I'm trying to think if we have in the past.
I know we had the goalkeeper from Liechtenstein. I can't remember. I'm struggling with names today. I've forgotten his name. Ben Buchel.
Yes, yeah.
He sounded a bit German, but anyway, yeah. So that's the Poland story. And I don't know. I've got something to show you here, which is slightly related, but on a lighter note. Is actually this is a Polish beer, Warka. Have you heard of that beer before?
I have actually.
Right. I'm just going to turn. I'm going to turn.
My sister-in-law's Polish.
What was that you said? Sorry, Craig.
My sister-in-law's Polish.
Oh,
so, yeah, I do.
Right.
I do recognise that.
Yeah, I'm just going to turn it round, and you're going to notice something here. You see it?
There he is, Artur Boruc.
Yeah,
himself.
And theirs is now this is why Poland has got a sense of humor, right? So they've put a classic goalkeeper on the can, right? And you can win something. But have a guess how much % of alcohol you think this is. Just have a guess.
It's going to be strong. It's Poland. I reckon probably about 6%.
Okay, so this one's 5.2. It's not a bad guess. But when they released that, they released 2 limited editions. So here's the second one, right?
Yep.
Now, that one, so the red one, and it's funny, they're the colours of cherries, aren't they? Red and the black.
Yes, yeah.
So the red one is 5.2%. And then if we just turn this one around, we can see the man himself who saved a penalty at Old Trafford against Ibrahimovic. Artur Boruc is having a party. How strong do you think this one is?
Well, to be honest, 5.2 strong. It's strong, but that has to be. Let's go with 8.
Yeah, actually, you've gone way too high there. It's 6.3. 6.3. So there's not a big difference between the two of them, but it's kind of quite cool. You know, Poland still does that. And, you know, I think probably this month for the Euros, lots of beer companies do that. They'll put a player on the can or something, won't they, to try and sell something. Or they'll have a flag. You know, there's ones where you collect all the flags of all the countries. That type of thing. You know, it's the right month for it.
Well, there is some places as well you've been to which I've never heard of, and I'm going to mention some of these names, and I'm really, really sorry if I do butcher the names.
Right.
Krolstu Dreamlandu.
Dreamlandu.
Landonia? Have I got that one right?
Ladonia is right, yeah.
Uzupis?
Uzupis.
Yeah. And I'm really going to struggle with this one. Karakalpakstan.
Karakalpakstan. Now,
Karakalpakstan.
I remember Karakalpakstan for 2 reasons. One is Bournemouth were playing Arsenal, right?
Yeah.
So I was at Karakalpakstan, you know, just so that your listeners can be aware of this. It's an unrecognized autonomous region of Uzbekistan. So to get to Karakalpakstan, you first need a visa for Uzbekistan, and then you need to cross into the autonomous part. Now they've got their own flag, their own government, and they're crazy. It's a totally, like, it's in a different world. It's I would probably compare it to like Cornwall, right? So that, let's say mainland Uzbekistan is a bit like England, and then you go to Karakalpakstan, everyone's just having a party, and but they're not surfing like, you know, in Cornwall. But because Cornwall has that sort of a little bit away from the rest of England, you know. Anyway, so I was trying to watch Arsenal. I think it was Arsenal away. I think we lost 2-0. I could be totally wrong, but we definitely didn't win or draw. And there was only one bar in this city, Ugench. There's only one bar that would show it, but I was the only customer. So it's like, I go in there. Have you got the Bournemouth Arsenal game? Yeah. I'm like, well, no one else is watching it. Yeah, don't worry, we'll put it on for you. So I'm sitting there, the only customer, and I'm knocking back the beers. And then I had to get a driver to take me across, because I wanted to watch the match first.
Yeah.
I had to get a driver to take me to Karakalpakstan. But what I didn't know is, because you're going into a different region, there's like some export stuff that you're doing, right? So a guy gets into it's a shared taxi, and I'm on my own. So to save money, I share with other guys, right? A guy gets in holding a television. And I don't mean a smart, you know, state-of-the-art modern television. I mean like a vintage 1991 Mitsubishi or Toshiba TV that sits on your lap and is dusty, and it looks like you could stick on I don't know, the Flintstones or something on it. It looked like a vintage 90s or 80s TV. And I'm like, how long is this journey to Karakalpakstan? We're like, 5 hours. So I've got to go all the way to Karakalpakstan. On my right is a girl with no teeth, and on my left is a guy carrying a TV. But the desert road is bumpy as hell. So the TV is just bouncing up and down, right? And then my savior, the next stop, a guy gets in the front with a bottle of whiskey. And I'm like, I thought you guys didn't drink that much. And he goes, no, this is Karakalpak. We're a bit different to the Uzbeks, because the previous place, I was the only person in the bar. And he gets in with a whiskey. So I give him a nickname already, Whiskey Boy. So I'm like, hey, Whiskey Boy, please can I have some whiskey? And he gives me a wee shot of whiskey. I'm like, this is all right now. So the journey across into Karakalpakstan was eased by the fact that I had my old iPod with me. So I was listening to music, drinking whiskey, going through this bumpy desert with a television and all this smoke bursting out at me. And this lady on my right asking me all sorts of ridiculous questions in Russian or Uzbek that I could never answer. But I made it. So I've been to Karakalpakstan. That was the dream, to go there, see it, and get out. Yeah, and the other places you mentioned, they're all what I would class as micronations. So they exist in principle, but whether or not people want to class it as a real country or just a fun place, they can. Uzupis is a cool republic which borders Lithuania, but it's for artistic people.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's part of my travel, is to visit places that are a bit lesser known, you know, like Boscombe, you know. It's funny. I was telling people about the Boscombe back of the net chant, right?
Yes.
People are like, why are you singing Boscombe back of the net? Because it's Bournemouth. I'm like, the football team's in Boscombe. You do know that, right? And it's like, you have to tell people, because if you think about it, like, some teams are not where they are, like geographically, like Grimsby, I think it's in Cleethorpes.
It is, yeah.
But I mean, Boscombe is part of Bournemouth now, right? But it's cool. It's cool to have this Boscombe thing going on, because it's literally the end of Springbourne. When you get to the roundabout is Boscombe, isn't it?
Yes,
It's like, that's where Boscombe starts. And I still love that song. You know, if we've got some specific songs, as Cherries fans, we've got lots of songs that other fans can't steal, because you can't do that. You can't have a Boscombe back of the net. You can't have an Up the Cherries in all departments, because it's ours, you know. So yeah, that's
and it wouldn't go with anything else, would it? It wouldn't sound right.
Yeah, it's because the Boscombe back then. I remember at the very first game I was at, the Hartlepool one, people started singing it at the corner, and I thought, that's a great song, because you only sing it if you've got a free kick or a corner. Well, that's when I sing it. So because you don't sing it at a penalty, because there's pressure on the guy to score, right? So you wouldn't sing Boscombe back of the net at a penalty. At least I wouldn't. I could be wrong there. Maybe other Cherries do, but I normally save that one for the free kick or the corner. I don't know, Craig. Am I right there? Would you say?
Yeah, I always do it. It's always the corner. Always has to be a corner. That's when I normally do it.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just a chant that it wouldn't work with any other football club.
Yeah, because you're just trying to tell the team, put it in the net. That's it.
Yeah.
And do it for Boscombe,
Yeah, exactly. And everybody's going, where's Boscombe? Well,
yeah.
actually, he was called Boscombe and Bournemouth Athletic all those years ago.
Yeah. And in fact, the first season we were in the Premier League, a lot of fans were like, who are Bournemouth? What are they doing up here? And I loved that, the fact that we were the underdog. Like, we beat Chelsea and Man United. The beating Chelsea away was like, it was phenomenal to do that, Yeah, Glenn Murray he scored the header. Was it header? Yeah, it was crazy days,
Well, of course, you have also been, and this is a place that really, really does interest me. Unfortunately, it's a place we can't go at the moment. And that's Chernobyl and Pripyat, of course, in the Ukraine.
Mm-hmm.
What was that journey like? Because, of course, there was, I think it was 1984, if I'm correct in thinking, when the reactor...
I'm thinking here, I think it was the 26th of April, 1986.
86, a couple of years out.
Do you know? I have to think. No, it was. So it was definitely the end of April, but it was 85 or 86. I think it was 86. So I found out you can do a tour. Right now, I was in Kiev, so I was already in Ukraine. And when you're in Ukraine, in those days it was different. There wasn't as much of a war going on. It was quite yellow and blue flags everywhere. It looked Ukrainian. It felt Ukrainian. It felt very safe. So I organized a tour for Chernobyl. I've got a job where I work for myself a lot of the time online. So opportunities come up where I might get a sponsored trip, or a company might pay me to take me somewhere. So because of that, I guess I have an advantage over organizing things, because I can pick which company I choose, and then I'll tailor it to my needs. So I wanted to do a full tour of Chernobyl. And the one I do have a regret is there's a football stadium that you can go to, and we didn't go to it. But there was two other guys on my tour. But what I did do was I went to the leisure center in Pripyat, which was closed in 1986 due to the contamination. And when they closed it, this is really crazy, is like they closed the leisure center, but they just left it as it is. So I'm in a five-a-side court, right? So I went to Chernobyl in 2015, right? So it was a five-a-side court, and there's a ball there. But that ball has been there since like 1985 or 86. 86. Let's go with 86. And so I'm thinking that it looks like a really old, like Soviet Union type of football. So I just said to my tour guide, do you see that ball is really close to the net? It's like about 2 meters out, right? So the nets are there and a five-a-side. And I said to him, can I kick it into the net and then move it back? Because I thought I better ask. Because, is it contaminated, right? But I've got a plastic bag on my shoes or something, right? So I just kicked it into the net. And then I'm like, I've scored a goal in Chernobyl. And then he said to me, just move it back to where it was, because everything has to be kept where it was, because it's like, it's basically, what's the word? It's a time shell or a time frame from the Soviet Union. Time warp. I felt like I'd gone back to the Soviet, and there's gas masks everywhere. There's like all Russian Soviet propaganda. I should say Soviet because obviously that's in Ukraine. It wasn't only Russian; it was like more Soviet style then, with Gorbachev and all of that. So Ukraine. Obviously, when the war eases and hopefully settles down, I would recommend people to visit Chernobyl, Craig. Really mind-blowing, mind-opening, and of course, dark tourism, as people call it. I'm not going backpacking through places to drink cocktails on a beach every day. I've done that in, Parkstone or Branksome. So, all the beaches, Alamchine, all the way down. But so I think I like to bit of a challenge with travel. It has to have a bit of something different for me. So Chernobyl is different, you know.
Definitely, definitely. And do you know what? That's a place I'd love to go to because it is like that time capsule, isn't it? It is.
That's the word I was looking for. Time
Yeah,
capsule.
I've
You got
just
it.
thought of it actually.
Yeah.
But it's fixated in time. It's a bit like I don't know if you've ever seen, the movie like Silent Hill. If you take out all the monsters and things like that, it is like that where
Right.
nobody is and everything is left as it was. You know, people you can see that everybody's daily lives, but it's just stopped all of a sudden. It's just
Yeah.
stopped at that moment in time. And I find that very, very interesting. And you did say there, you don't go to places that are easy. One place that most definitely isn't easy is North Korea.
Yeah.
Um, Firstly, how the hell do you get to North Korea? And
Right. Okay.
secondly, what is it
Yeah.
like?
No, I mean, I'll tell you quite a few things about this, but one of my mates runs a tour company that goes to North Korea, right?
Yeah,
So for a start, that's cool. And the second thing is he's an Arsenal fan, and I've drank with him, and he's great crack. He's
yeah,
even interviewed me on his podcast. He's got a podcast. So the tour company that I use is Young Pioneer Tours,
yeah,
YPT. We call them YPT for short. And their idea is to get cheap, good tours to places your mother and father don't want you to go
yeah,
to. So they do Iraq, Afghanistan, etc. as well. But I've been on a few tours with them because they're my friends. But
mm,
so basically, I said to Gareth years ago, look, I need to go to North Korea, and I said, which tour should I go on? Because they have about 4 or 5 windows in the year that you can pick,
yeah,
something like that. So I decided to go there on the National Day because they have a big festival. So they got the Pyongyang National Day Festival. Their National Day is the 9th of the 9th. So it's always in the 9th of September. 9-9. Easy to remember.
yeah,
So I went there. I flew in from Beijing in China. So I had to get a double entry visa for China because it was going China to North Korea, single
yeah,
entry for North Korea. And then I got the train from North Korea back into China. So I needed another visa for China. So double entry for China, single entry for North Korea, sorted a lot of it through the tour company and my friend. But the rest of it was just freelance, kind of doing it myself, because once you get into the country, you can ask your tour guides, what are we doing today? Can you take us
yeah,
here? Can you take us there? Normally, there's a set list because North Korea can be a lot more strict than that. We're not just
yeah,
going to London and going Buckingham Palace, Westminster Abbey, the Thames. We can do that on our own. No tour guide would be needed anyway when you're there. So here in North Korea, your tour guide will speak to you in English and explain to you what each thing is. So, and it's not boring. It's really interesting. So they'll take you through, like this is Kim Il Sung's first house where he grew up.
yeah,
And they'll take you into like the National Library. And this is why people get wild about this. But we stayed in a 5-star hotel in Pyongyang, right?
mm,
And I had BBC on my television, and that blows people's mind. They're like, "What? What do you mean you had BBC?" And it's like, "Well, it's got BBC." So I was watching Match of the Day,
yeah,
and if you say to someone, "I was watching Match of the Day in North Korea," they're like, "No," they're like, "Oh, that's fake news. That's not possible." Well, actually, that's what happens because if you're staying in a 5-star hotel, they've got all that stuff for the foreigners, right?
yeah,
There's a brewery bar, there's a bowling alley, there's a karaoke bar, there's a casino. It's got all that, but only the rich locals can go to it. So the foreigners get the privileges, of course, because we're not from North Korea. We're paying money to visit their country.
yeah,
Um, and I went to watch a local football team train. I went to 2 of the national stadiums, but I didn't see a full level match because I was
yeah.
kind of with the tour. But you can, my friend can organize to go and watch a full level match, and actually Pyongyang's it's a cool city.
Mhm.
It's very very old school. It's I'll see nothing like that again.
Is it one of those because when I've seen videos and you'll be able to see them on YouTube and they're dotted around and so many people have been to North Korea, it's always the case of the tour guide keeps you very strictly. You can't speak to anybody
Yeah.
outside of the group. You can't go where you want. You can't go, say, for example, if you wanted to go to the local supermarket, you have to either go with that tour guide or you can't go at all, or they go and get it for you.
Yeah.
Is it actually like that, or is it a little bit more relaxed than
Yeah.
made out?
So it's definitely more relaxed, right? But you have rules. So basically, like, because I knew some of the guys in the tour. In fact, the guy running my tour, I didn't know him before the tour, but he's from Australia. He's a friend of mine now, but he's very close friends with the North Koreans and the Chinese, because he's a tour guide and he's really excellent. So I would just say to him, look, what can I do here? Can I take a photo of that? Can I go over and look at that? We went into a shopping center and there was a shopping mall, and I found it so incredibly ridiculous that the only football shirts they had were Manchester City and Chelsea. So that also blew my mind, because it's like, I'm thinking, oh, can we see if they've got a local team shirt? I might have even bought the local Pyongyang FC or something, but there was none of that. They got a Man City shirt with Aguero on the back. And I'm thinking, why have they got that? I don't know, because but it is a closed country. But if you're with a tour, just ask your tour guide, what can I do? What can't I do? And if there's something you want to do, suggest it to them, and they'll just tell you yes or no. So I asked, can I go and watch these footballers train? And the guy goes, yeah, no problem. Just stay in this part because the government are over there or something. So it's not as strict, but don't be an idiot when you're there. Like, ask before you do something and adhere to the rules. If they've got a rule, it's there for a reason. I mean, I was out in the bars drinking because the tour guide said we're going to go drinking. I was dancing to Madonna in downtown Pyongyang on a Saturday night, and then I came home and watched Match of the Day. So it's a different country, but it's behind closed doors. But it's worth seeing.
Do you know what? If you go there again, I'm quite tempted to go with you, because I tell you what, it would be such an experience, be an amazing place to go, and just to see that, and I guess see something that is, I guess, the Western media paint it in such a light when in fact it's not normally like that.
Yeah, it's it depends also on the personality that you are. Like, because they knew that I was a blogger, they let me away with a bit more. And also I don't criticize countries very often. It's very rare for me to write something negative. So all my stories about North Korea, I've promoted it in a really positive way, because for me it's a very positive place. It's just the fact that a lot of people are against their government. But most of my blog stuff is not political. So I didn't care about that. Oh, the government, I didn't talk to the government. I went there to see the bars, the food, the sights. I was focusing on that. So when you focus on that, people don't like it when I become non-political, but that's the best way to be. Go in there as a neutral and respect that they have a different, regime. Saudi Arabia is getting all the stick at the minute, with the footballers, right? Now, I've been to Saudi Arabia, and that was a country where I thought, gosh, this is way too strict. So I go in to get a hamburger in a restaurant in Riyadh, and all the boys are eating hamburgers here. And there's a big wall, and all the girls are on the other side eating hamburger. And a guy's trying to talk to his wife, and he can't. And I'm like, wait a minute. So for me, Saudi Arabia is more strict than North Korea, because they've got all these really, like North Korea, I'm partying to Madonna and watching Match of the Day. In Saudi Arabia, a guy can't even talk to his wife. It blows your mind as well when you see it happening. And then he has to come out and he'll say to her, how was your hamburger? Oh, very good. How was yours? Good. Yeah. Maybe next time we'll eat together. But
I get, it's quite eye-opening, because at the end of the day, they might not appreciate the way our governments are run and things like that. And you've got to be very, very open-minded and, appreciate all different sort of aspects, of people and, different countries and different cultures. I guess that's what makes it brilliant. But one country, of course, that, again, you can't go to at the moment, but you have been to, is Palestine. And of course, what's happening over there is very, very sad. But what was your experience like in Palestine?
Well, I had always wanted to go to Israel and Palestine, and I recognize them both because I'm quite a separatist, as you know. But I ended up there because my friend was getting married. So basically, I met an Israeli girl. Well, actually, she became a friend of mine, but I met her on a trip to Antarctica. So it's crazy enough to start with. So I met her on a trip to Antarctica, and she invited me and my ex-girlfriend to a wedding in Israel. There's no way you would say no to that because it's a once in a lifetime to get to actually go to a wedding. So we crossed the border by land from Jordan because we didn't want to kind of risk going into the airport and all of that because we just noticed at the time it was easier to cross by land. So we crossed in by land, and then I had organized through a tour company to do a sponsored trip to Palestine because I knew that they were going to be safe and I knew that they were going to be informative. So they took us to Hebron in Palestine. So we went to the wedding first. After the wedding, we did the Palestine. So probably 3 days in Palestine, Hebron, Ramallah. And I'll tell you why it was a bit scary because so we get on the bus and the first thing they do on the microphone is they announce, oh, just so that you know, all the windows are like, they're not double glazed. They're like quadruple glazed. So like if a bullet comes, it will only get through the first 3 panes of glass. I'm like, oh, that's a relief. You know, what about the 4th one? Will it possibly smash us? And I'm like, why are they telling us that? You know, I grew up in Northern Ireland, but so we're doing the tour and we're walking down the street. There's nobody there. Apart from our tour group. This is a bit weird. Why is nobody there? Oh, nobody's here because there were too many bombs in the street and they closed it so that there's no more bombs because they've basically destroyed everything already. So you're looking at this street in Hebron and it looks like a mess. It looks like they're still at war. And then the soldier takes us up to the top and he said, this is the best viewpoint over the whole of Hebron. And he's holding a gun. They're all holding guns. And he said, look, you have to be careful here because there were snipers everywhere. You just look around, there's snipers. A guy was killed about 5 minutes walk from that place about a week before we were there. And he told us that. He's like, oh, yeah, there's a guy killed there about a week before. You take it with a pinch of salt. Maybe they're just trying to scare you to tell you that. But then I thought, well, fair enough, but this is a different day, different week. And so just get in and get out safely is the main thing with countries like that. And respect their culture in Palestine, of course.
Well, you are releasing a book about Cherries and your journey. When are you releasing that?
Yeah, this is a work in progress. Now, I actually started writing it probably in 2003, but I didn't know back then that I was going to, you know, because it sort of starts with my journey of growing up in Northern Ireland, watching Colin Clark and George Best, knowing that they were at the Cherries, and then in the 90s, like Stevie Robinson and Keith Rowland, a few other Northern Irish links. So the book, it's got too many chapters. I think I've got 65 at the minute, which is too many. So that gives you with 2 options: is either you release 2 books or you cut it down to 1. So I think the best option is to cut it down to 1. So cutting it down, editing. If I get that out within a year, I'm doing well. So don't quote me or put too much pressure, but I've written and released books before on travel and other subjects, and you always go over the deadline. And I don't know why that is. I think it's because you want to be a perfectionist, or you see something you don't like in it. Maybe with musicians, you know, like albums always get delayed. It's like, I feel it's a bit like that with the book. So I've got a book coming out, and my nickname is Ulster Cherry, which obviously Ulster is 6 of the Northern Irish, 6 of the Ulster counties are in Northern Ireland, so we call it Ulster, and Cherry obviously from Bournemouth. But Ulster Cherry is actually a type of cherry.
Is it?
So, yeah, it's a real type of cherry. So if you can ever find that in a supermarket, try it. It's a sweet cherry. It's actually from the USA. So no doubt Foley probably knows what it is. So we get the owners bring us some Ulster cherries over from the US next time. You know, well, we got that tour coming up in the summer with Wrexham and that. So yeah, the book's coming out. It's called Ulster Cherry, but I'll probably tell you more about that when it's coming out because it's in the future, Craig. You know,
of course.
But it will follow most of what you've just heard in my interview today. It will follow most of that sort of trend, storytelling, last minute equalizers, red cards, missing a goal because you were in the toilet. Who hasn't done that? Oh, I went to the toilet and then Fletcher scored. Oh, I'll have to wait to watch it on YouTube tomorrow then. So this type of thing, that's all it is. It's just a story of 4 divisions watching the Cherries. I haven't been to a European match yet, which is so I wouldn't mind waiting to do a European match as part of the book, but I think we're probably not going to get into Europe unless something major happened this season, or I would have to do an away friendly. Like we played Hibs, I think, recently away in Europe. So I have never seen us outside of Scotland, England, or Wales. And Scotland, I only went to see Carlisle. So I sort of went to Scotland, then came into Carlisle. So only England and Wales, really. So the dream is to get an away game.
Well, you never know. We might qualify for a European competition.
Take the Conference League and get Serbian team away or something. It'd be
mad. Exactly. What's that team in Transnistria or?
Oh, Tiraspol, Sheriff.
Yes, that's it. Yeah. That's it.
I mean, Brighton and Hove Albion, Wigan, they've been in Europe, and I see us as bizarre as it sounds, I see us as a bigger club than Wigan. But yet they won the FA Cup, and they will criticize me for saying we're bigger, but we're Premier League, Wigan. So this type of thing, we're in the top flight because our football is in the top 20 teams in the country, and we're going nowhere soon. I mean, we're not going down soon. We're going to get Iraola to kind of keep doing the same what we did last season, and maybe get a cup run. If not, definitely want to push top 10. Got to push top 10. And if we're lucky one day, Craig, you and I will have a beer in Bosnia or something at an away game. We'd be mad.
Oh, mate, we're going to do it. We're going to do it. I think we better wrap up on one last thing, because I think this really will tie the video all together. But with regards to the future for AFC Bournemouth, so we've both said, this club, when we first moved to this area, small, unfashionable club, somebody that was punching above their weight. Of course, Bill Foley's come in, and there's all this talk of the new stadium. We've got a magnificent, and I've been past there, the magnificent training ground that is being built. It's unbelievable. It's head and shoulders over a lot of training grounds in the Premier League already. But the next plan, of course, is this stadium. Are you worried that we are going to lose our identity when we build this new stadium? Because some people are surging around and saying, well, 18,500 isn't enough. We want a 37,000 seat stadium, which I think is too much. But there is that risk of us losing our identity.
Yeah, I think this is a real problem, because we've played at Dean Court for so long, and we know the history of Dean Court. The family put aside the money and give us the land. And it's an iconic place, because it's in Boscombe, just at the edge of Kings Park. It's a classic old school ground, and we turned it round. We used to be the other way. And then we built it up. We changed the names with these sponsors, but I still call it Dean Court, of course. And Dean Court is Dean Court. But look at all the clubs that have done it. Leicester had Filbert Street. They moved to their new stadium. They win the Premier League. Wigan moved from Springfield Park to their new place. They win the FA Cup. Hull City moved. And, I'm not comparing us in any way to other clubs, because we are our own club. But if other clubs that have also been up and down the leagues, like Leicester and Wigan, can build a new stadium, get new fans, which I know some people are against, but let's be honest, if those new fans are aged 0 to 15, I'd rather they come and support the Cherries than go and become a Man City fan. Do you know what I mean?
Great. Yeah, agree completely.
And so I think we need a new stadium. Yeah, we just don't want to lose the identity. I would even say red and black seats, because obviously they wanted to, some of the seats are pink at Dean Court now because they're faded in the sun.
Yep.
Sunny Bournemouth, right? So we got pink seats. But so if we get a new stadium, I think the biggest debate is how many seats. Is it 18,000 enough? Like what Brentford, Fulham and Swansea, they've got between 18 and 22. Do we go a bit further and go 25,000? or do we go extreme and hit 30 and try to be like, even, I don't know who's even got a 30,000, but in the South Coast, maybe even, because the Scummers won't like it, will they? If we get
exactly.
If we get a
that's
bigger stadium, yeah. I mean, if we get a bigger stadium than them, whoa.
Yeah.
So I don't know, but I'm in favour of a new stadium. I'm not worried about losing the identity because we'll always have Boscombe back in it, up the Cherries. We'll always play in red and black. And we'll always have heroes like Steve Fletcher and, Alan Connell, Sean Cooper. They're still, getting involved in the club. Stephen Purchase, Neil Moss. These are sort of local guys that played for us. And I think Iraola sees that. He sees that there's a family atmosphere. I'm sure he's met all these ex-players and he knows the likes of Fletch and Cooper. And I like to have that. I think Tommy Elphick's doing something now as well.
Yes, he is. Yeah, he's back at the club. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's what I love, because what we're doing is we're carrying on from the guys that brought us from the 4th division to the Premier League, not forgetting our history. Any club that forgets their history, well, you're finished, So I think we got to cling on to it, but hopefully a new stadium, state of the art, and win a cup. Let's win a major cup, like FA or League Cup. That's it. Just once in my life, if we can get to the cup final and let's beat Leeds in the cup final or something, right?
That'd be amazing.
That would be mad.
It would be like England versus Germany all over again, wouldn't it? And can you imagine Bournemouth versus Leeds and we beat them
I think
Wembley.
The security, I'm not sure about the security for that. I think there'd be more horses than police. Yeah. But you'd have to be segregating really strong, because I think they just played Scummers at Wembley, didn't they? Leeds.
They did, yes. Yeah, they did.
It's not an easy one to be a policeman on that.
They got a bad record at Wembley as well, so I'd fancy our chances against them.
I would definitely take them, take them at Wembley. But sure, they're in the second tier at the minute, aren't they, Leeds?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, we might end up getting them in the FA or League Cup, though, this season. You see, you never know with the draws,
Yeah. Well, they can stay in the Championship, so yeah.
Keep them down there. Keep them with the Pompey, and Plymouth are in there, so keep them all down there.
Exactly. They still think they're the biggest club in the country. How many years have they been saying that? How many years? You watch, we're going to see an influx of them now.
Yeah. Well, we got Lewis Cook. We got a few guys from Leeds, didn't we?
Lewis Cook, of course, Tyler Adams as well. Sinistera. And even more. Potentially even more on the way.
Yeah.
Of course,
Warren Feeney, believe it or not, came from Leeds as well.
Yes,
Warren, he was youth YTS at Leeds, and then he came to Bournemouth.
Kane went the other way, didn't he, towards the end of his career as well? Remembering that. But honestly, Johnny, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on, mate. We're going to have to do this again in the future.
Yeah, it's been great.
Really enjoyed it.
Yeah, absolutely great to be on, and hope your readers and listeners enjoy it. If they ever want to get in touch, I'm not difficult to find online. Jonny Blair, Don't Stop Living. You can find my blogs or my social media, whatever. Just write to me. Yeah, even Leeds and Scummer fans, you can write to me if you want. I'm all right. You support Yeovil Town, just doesn't matter. Send me a message about travel, as long as you know that the Cherries are the team for me.
Exactly, mate. Exactly. Well, no doubt we'll catch up with you soon. The link is in the description. Go visit the website. It really, really, really is interesting. And I'm not just saying that because you're on here. I actually have been through so many different stories that we've been doing this now an hour and 3/4. And to be honest, there's so many other stories that we could talk about. But, mate, pleasure as always. And we will catch up very, very soon, no doubt.
Yeah, all the best. Up the Cherries.
Up the Cherries, mate. I'll see you soon. And thank you, everybody, for joining us. Remember, hit the like, the subscribe, and the bell button below. It helps the channel to grow. Do also check out all of our previous interviews. We've had Tom Meehan, of course, former frontman of Kasabian, on the show, talking about Leicester City and the promotion, and of course his entire career. We've had Richard Archer from Hardfi on the show. We've had Peter Hooton from The Farm, Damon Minchella from Ocean Colour Scene, Richie Neville from Five, Adam Devlin from the Blue Tones, Gaz Whelan from the Happy Mondays, and there's many, many, many more as well. So do go check out all of those other interviews. Until the next show, up the cherries, and thank you for joining us.
The TalkSport Fan Network.
The ultimate on-demand destination for the UK's best fan-led football podcasts.
Want authentic supporter insight on all things Bournemouth? Follow Up the Cherries in all departments on the TalkSport Fan Network.
Club-dedicated content created by the fans, for the fans.
Search TalkSport Fan Network.